Okay, so I'll start off by saying this. I was never the biggest Beatles fan in the world. Not because I didn't appreciate the music, but I guess it just wasn't kind of where my tastes were going. I mean, it's as simple as that. So, Get Back, the documentary comes out a few weeks ago. And I number one, I love watching documentaries, especially when it comes to singers, musical groups. I mean, if you remember, if you're my age, late 40s, back on VH1, Behind the Music, I think I watched all of them at one point. Everything from, there was Motley Crue, Bon Jovi, Judas Priest, you had Leonard Skinner, one of my favorite ones, but everything, even the flip side to that was like Leif Garrett and TLC. I mean, I loved watching those too. So I knew I would thoroughly enjoy this documentary. And I'm not going to get into, hey, wait till the end, my thoughts. You got to check it out. If you're a fan of music, if you're a fan of the Beatles, if you're a fan of just documentaries in general, this is definitely something you've got to watch. It does take a lot of investment of time. It's 3 episodes, but deceivingly 3 episodes where it's, I think the first 2 each are come in about 2.5, 2:40 in terms of time. The last one was a little bit less, I think an hour and less than 2 hours. So, do the math, you're looking at, 7+ hours of footage. And being a musician and being in a band and watching how everything unfolded in the studio for that Let It Be album. Now, keep in mind, I didn't see the Let It Be movie. Again, not the biggest fan, but my taste went elsewhere. And not that I don't appreciate what the Beatles have done and their influences, even what I do, how the music I do and have done, and the artists that I like, how they've influenced them. It just, I never kind of went down that path for whatever reason. If I had to pick a band or a group from the 60s that I probably would have more interest in, or not to say more interest, but just where my taste went, a band like the Beach Boys, for whatever reason, it was probably the harmonies. I really got into that. And I kind of just followed, I guess, what my dad liked. That was the way it is. If you grew up in North Jersey, outside of New York City, again, if you're my age, you listen to CBS FM, because that's what your parents listened to. So, I mean, again, I was listening to the Beatles at a young age. I just didn't kind of get into it. But for this documentary, I just thought it was fantastic, for a couple different reasons, I guess. Obviously, at the very end, the rooftop concert, which I know is a, historical, moment in time, which I thought was really cool. But everything leading up to that, even from the very beginning when they just kind of all sat down. I mean, I know they had a goal in mind. We're going to sit down for X amount of weeks and we're going to record, and here comes the album. So just seeing how that process worked with all of them just kind of sitting around in an area. At first it was a huge studio, but just all of them kind of grouped together in a little cluster. And they're just jamming out stuff and, what's good, what's not good. And you can see how these things kind of just morphed into, the songs that, we know, I guess. So I really enjoyed that dynamic. And I really got to see, again, this is me for the first time. I mean, if you're a diehard Beatles fan, you probably know this already. Just seeing the dynamic of Paul and John and really how they were the ones, at least in my opinion, watching this particular movie, really how they were calling the shots, but in a way where it kind of worked at the time for the band. But then at the same time, you can see how things started to unravel during this period, especially with George Harrison, who I guess technically quit the band at one point, got back together. But before the Let It Be album was actually released, I think the band had broken up at that point. The band breaks up and a month later the album comes out. So I know somebody could probably just kind of check me on that, but I believe that's what it was. So I thought that to be very, very interesting. Just kind of see how this dynamic played out. It was interesting. So I mean, it's definitely worth the watch if you're into this. I probably would watch it again just to kind of see what I've missed over the course of just watching it, one episode back to back over the other. But again, from the recording process and seeing how this all kind of worked out, I thought was really interesting, because what they were doing, it's kind of funny, with the bands I've been in. Again, I'm not comparing bands, but how you just process certain things and how you start to learn and kind of jam. A lot of similarities, which was pretty interesting. I also didn't realize that they really kind of had a 5th Beatle on this particular album. Billy Preston, I believe was his name, piano player, and I believe he was actually on the rooftop for the concert. So just interesting, that dynamic and how he kind of just brought that in there, and they kind of all vibed together really good. They knew him, I guess, from gigs and playing shows in Germany at one point. So it was just really cool. It was cool to kind of see that moment in time. I thought Peter Jackson did a great job in terms of putting the film together. I really dug how, I don't know how many hours of raw footage there is proper grammar. But just seeing, I guess, through different points of that documentary, how they would show the calendar, crossing off each date, so you kind of know what was happening on what day, just to kind of give you perspective of that timeline. So I thought that was really good as well. So, again, not being the biggest Beatles fan, I thought this was a really good, inside look to that machine, I guess, the Beatles, that machine, that songwriting, performing machine. And all these little tidbits I didn't know along the way, in terms of when their last show was compared to the rooftop gig and how long it was and why they weren't doing anything and just how big they really got. But I also, you could see things starting to unravel with the band at this point, as they all kind of had these different ideas, and it was hard, I guess, to mesh a lot of them together, and they figured they wanted to do it their own way. So I thought it was just kind of cool. Again, I'm not the Beatles expert here. I enjoyed watching it. I love documentaries to begin with, but this was really cool seeing that moment in time. And again, you're talking, the Beatles were together for 8 years. They broke up in 1970. You're talking 50 plus years since the breakup, just of how important they still are. So just kind of seeing that moment in time. I know a lot of people had mentioned they wanted to see something like this from, maybe a couple of the previous albums. Who knows? Who knows whatever's around at this point, but, I haven't heard anything, but definitely check it out. If you're into that sort of thing, again, Beatles, documentaries, music in general, just kind of seeing those types of things, definitely worth doing. So hopefully you enjoy it. Let me know if you've seen them. I'm kind of curious, what have I missed on this? Again, I'm just kind of going through this real quick. I don't want it to be, an hour type of video, but I'm just kind of, off the top of the head here in terms of what I remembered after watching it, letting it sink in. So let me know if you watched it, what you thought. Would you watch it again? What did you like? What didn't you like? And, we kind of just, compare notes. So thanks for stopping by and checking this out. I'll see you next time.